Torah tells us in regard to the materials that were needed for the building of the Mishkan, there were 3 metals that were needed: gold, silver, and copper. And very often in the Torah, when words are mentioned, they are references to other things. It alludes to certain periods in history. We find that in the desert, after the Jews were atoned for the golden calf, it was necessary for them to build a Mishkan, a tabernacle. God said to Moshe, "Let them make for me a domicile so that I should dwell in the midst." And the 13 materials that are needed. Metals, as I mentioned, was gold, silver, and copper. So the Midrash tells us gold is alluding to the Mishkan that was overseen by Moshe. Moshe being the most special Jew who ever lived, the greatest prophet who ever lived, a mortal who ascends to heaven 40 days and 40 nights to receive the written oral law on behalf of the Jewish people. Every aspect of the Mishkan was overseen and blessed by Moshe. In the words of the Midrash, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is known as Mishkano Shel Moshe. It is the tabernacle of Moshe. And why is the tabernacle of Moshe identified as gold? Because it was beloved to God as something as precious as gold. It's only to convey and communicate the level of endearment the Mishkan had to God because of Moshe's involvement and blessing of the Mishkan. So the Mishkan identifies with Moshe. That's Zohov, gold. In the words of the Midrash, She'ya'ov la'Kadosh Baruch Hu kizov. It was beloved to God as gold. Silver is alluding to the first temple. The first temple was overseen and built by King Solomon. The wisest man who ever lived. Solomon ruled the world supreme. The level of wealth that the Jews had in his era was to such a point that silver had no value. Silver was considered no more valuable than the stones lying in the street. So when the Torah says silver, this is the first temple, which was built by King Solomon. Copper, in Hebrew, which is nechoshes, is alluding to the second temple period. The second temple period was not at the same level as the first temple. For 70 years after the destruction of the first temple, we returned from Babylon to rebuild the second temple. During the second temple era, There was no longer prophecy. God did not openly communicate with mankind any longer. The Talmud tells us that 5 essential components or important aspects which existed in the first temple did not exist in the second. In Hebrew, the word nechoshes alludes to nechushta. It's deficient. It had serious deficiency in it. The divine presence was not present in the second temple period on an ongoing basis, as it was during the first temple period. So gold alludes to the Mishkan of Moshe, which was beloved to God as gold. Silver alludes to the temple that was built and overseen by King Solomon to indicate the dimension of wealth, that silver nearly had no value. And the copper is alluding to the second temple period, which was deficient because 5 essential components or elements were lacking in the second temple.